this week, Parliament Tanase, one member of Parliament, I shared them on the parliamentary activity because of the position, Minister of State for Government Communication. On the John Mahama and 82 to currently come to Kenya. And one making a certain point here for me, I didn't say I didn't call. Mama team and daddy, I said my Kebia, and I'm very happy to say one of the first statements of Parliament, or yes, MP from Prior, so any raises our issue, and ordinary two movie. My mom was TB, but I'm very important. I see me now, you party financing. The one Crophobium was shady background. Who papa bi omo ye diema bi omo ye yenim krofo ye galamso omo ko parliament na no pesa man for do madwen ko ho. And I think say we tie the contribution and activity so far ma hwe no news so ma hwe no TV3 I think that's our maturity na ba honorable Felix Kwakye Ofosu asem na making critical analysis and subscribe me na mo Ghana nkomo Felix asem na ye kanene and no be make it post to be. And no case of Felix Kwakye Ofosu, I think so over the years and it's grown into the role. I'm particularly surprised the Minister of Information. I could create another means. I think that it's too complicated a role. But to the person, I think that I like the way I communicated so far. No, what you say, I no Ephraim. It's not more aggression. It's more about now maturity, stability. I'm a new leader beyond. I think I make personally, me path and your market leadership. Me gidi me person kind of leadership. No, a leader must be able to assert his authority without being giddy. No, and me pen the communicate. And if I kind of the margin course one to me channel first parliamentary, and the statement on the floor of parliament is very important. No kasa about MPs nisi ko almost saying the primaries. On beboka if we do main election the kra no munye sika enye. Na development so the command and Crawford na won't be for development then kwa chicha my delegate in Crawford ketu bi. And that is what I think the MPP must look at. The MPP must open it up. So delegate system I said two parties no mutwam. Omumiem every card bearing member must vote. E better sika sem na so. We don't Crawford ketu bi no makoje 100 million. Now we 5 times now we jinsas now we fridge we TV. And I think it's very, very important to see I drink 5 minutes. On the price when piden, by price when piden, my video to follow the enemy about 5 minutes. Person would TB now do I drink call. And I think that's very, very important. The way a political parties need say sika. One who leaked MPP budget now. Charlie says he can't in a minute. Taxes here no mobile dream. Any go dear could you as I can on Kobo in now. And they are very important. But so Felix Kwakye Ofosu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I need to thank my colleague, Honorable Edem Agbana, for being gracious enough to see this time to me. Mr. Speaker, I associate fully with my colleague, the Honorable Davis Opoku of the Mpraeso constituency, who once upon a time was my junior in school, but is now my senior in Parliament. Such is the vicissitudes of life. Mr. Speaker, he makes an important point about the need for intra-party reforms in terms of the way that candidates are selected to contest for parliament. The monetization of the process has become extremely detrimental to the well-being of this House. What has happened, Mr. Speaker, is that quality is increasingly taking a back seat, and money bags are holding sway. The only way around it is for the parties to realize that it is in their interests that their best and brightest come to Parliament, because it is the quality inherent in those who come to this House that shapes the way in which governance is undertaken. There was a time when parties actually had to go head hunting in order to select candidates for certain constituencies. But now every Tom, Dick, and Harry shows up, and to the extent that they have deep pockets, they are able to ascend to the candidacy of parties in various constituencies. This is not sustainable. The amounts of money that one needs to spend in order to win party primaries often even affects one's ability to prosecute a meaningful campaign in the general elections. Because by the time you are done, you would either be deep in debt or you'll be totally bankrupt. So reforms are an absolute necessity for the political parties in terms of how primaries are structured and in terms of how candidates emerge. There is a second leg to the Honorable Opoku Ansah's submission or statement, which we need to consider carefully, and it is about whether or not MPs are development agents. Mr. Speaker, on paper and in fact, MPs are not development agents. We are essentially legislators. At most, we hold some influence in terms of how we are able to direct development to our constituencies. But there is also an objective reality that we must face, Mr. Speaker. That reality is that government, by virtue of our status as a developing country, is unable to reach every part of this country. And for that reason, there are those in our country who face extreme deprivation, who are literally cut off from the rest of this country and have basic needs that have remained unmet for decades. If someone does not step into that breach to meet some of those needs, there will be immense suffering. That is why, Mr. Speaker, the decision to contest to come to Parliament must be one that is made after sober reflection and candid introspection to determine whether you have what it takes to do what this job requires. So even though we are not development agents on paper, we are forced to become development agents because of the reality of our people. I'm sure if you went around and spoke to each one of us, and you would know, Mr. Speaker, because we have been in this house for quite some time, that the sort of demands that are made on you drain you. But if you do not meet those demands, those who come to make them will languish in suffering. So a certain level of resourcefulness is required of all those who want to come to this house. One does not need to be wealthy. You only need to be resourceful, which means that you know what to do to mobilize the needed resources to address a particular problem. In the fullness of time, as and when our status improves from developing to developed, I'm sure that some of these problems will be addressed. So even as we repeat the mantra that we are not development agents, we must appreciate that the reality of this job is that you are going to be the focal point of development in your constituency, that everybody will look up to you as the one who can address their concerns. It is not something we should shy away from, Mr. Speaker. It is something that we must strive to achieve, pending the reaching of every part of this country by government to resolve their needs. I thank you for the opportunity to make my maiden statement in this house.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, subscribe, mame. I have a critical analysis channel.